Please enjoy this message from David Arquette sent in by the fabulous Carrie Tenney.
Hey Ryan, how are you? Thanks for doing the Scream podcast.
Like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
You are listening to Scream with Ryan C. Showers, the podcast for Scream fans just like you. Join Ryan every week as he takes a deep dive into the horror film series that defined the 90s and redefined the genre. Scream with Ryan C. Showers is your source for scene and quote analysis, character dissections, and the latest news about upcoming installments of the Scary Movie franchise.
I hear you like horror movies, Curly, but do you like them as much as him?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scream with Ryan C. Showers. I'm your host, Ryan C. Showers. Thank you for joining me for today's episode. I couldn't be more grateful for everybody out there who listens to the show, who supports my podcast here, listening every episode, or on social media on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. If you would like to become a member of the podcast, come to the group Zooms, be on the show on a one-on-one or small group setting, consider joining the Patreon with Scream with Ryan C. Showers. In addition to the benefits of coming on the podcast, you can also join our social media groups, in particular on Instagram. That's the main hub of the podcast. I also do a monthly audio commentary of a Scream movie or a Scream-related film. From now through April, we are going to be having a new Scream movie audio commentary. So if you would like to hear my thoughts in an audio commentary form in the style of Wes Craven, Marion Maddalena, et al. Of the original trilogy, please consider subscribing and supporting the show. Thank you to every single person out there who subscribes on Patreon. So I need to thank TJ Jones, who does all of the graphic design work for the podcast, and Ashley Summers, who helps me produce the show every week. In addition, I need to thank everybody over at Patreon, including the Stab Investors and Daddy Ghostfaces. The Daddy/Mama Ghostfaces, they include Carrie Tenney, Corey Wilson, Andrew Dominguez, and Brett Janovich. I also need to thank all of my Stab investors. They include Mark Harim, Josh Carr, Allie, Tamika Jones, Christian Ranke, David D., Gustavo Mora, Jess Mariano, Joey Nabrini, aka The Vault, John Cardney, Josh Camillari, Scream Queens Podcast, both Josh and Justine, Kevin Abner, Mark Vieira, PWO5, aka Philip Douglas, Roy Garza from the Hoodie Talks podcast, Ryan Not Dying Young, Sam Levy, and Stevie Shears. Hey everyone. So what you're about to hear is an episode that I recorded with the hosts of the Happy Horror Time podcast back for the Scream 7 release week. It was the review of the movie. It's me, Matt, and Tim from Happy Horror Time. You may have already seen me on their YouTube show or listened to me on their podcast feed, but this is a rerun technically. In addition to that, there are 2 clips from other podcast interviews that they have done recently. They did an interview with Scott Foley, obviously Roman Bridger, my favorite Ghostface, and an interview with Kevin Williamson, obviously legend right now. So for both interviews, I was able to submit a question for Scott and Kevin. For Scott's, I asked him about the handhold, the infamous Ryan C. Showers, Sydney holding Roman's hand at the end of Scream 3 as he's dying, and kind of the symbolic importance of that. And I have a question for Kevin Williamson about kind of the legacy of Scream 7 as it relates to the entries that came before. So you're going to hear first from Scott and Kevin answering the questions that I submitted to Happy Horror Time, and then you're going to hear me and Matt and Tim. I'm proud of that conversation, and I want it to be on my show. I want Matt and Tim's voices to be represented. All right, everybody, please enjoy the rest of the episode.
So we have a question for you from a good friend of ours, Ryan Showers, who hosts the Scream with Ryan C. Showers podcast, where he explores and analyzes like the entire Scream franchise. First off, you are his favorite Ghostface by far.
Is that right?
Yes. Oh, of course. I mean,
thanks, Ryan.
Number one. Yes. But his question is, how did you interpret that moment at the very end when Sydney is holding Roman's hand as he's taking his last breaths? Like, do you think it was her way of saying she was kind of sorry for what he went through, or she understood his pain? How did you interpret that moment?
I interpret it as, well, look, I think back then my interpretation was, yes, there was a certain amount of, not necessarily guilt, but understanding that she had for him as a character. Now that I'm in my mid-50s, I think it's a beautiful show of just humanity. You know, it's that simple, and look, you can read into it, and maybe she knew and was holding his hand and felt bad that, you know, well, I don't know. We'll never know. But I think it was a great moment for her character, actually. A really great moment for her character. Showed the humanity that we don't often get to see of Sydney. She's sort of closed off because of everything that happened to her, and to be able to see her express it like that was kind of cool.
Did Wes have any specific direction for that, or just like she pulls away?
I don't remember. I'm sure they did it both ways. I'm sure they did it without her holding his hand, and then with, and probably played it for test audiences both ways to see which worked out. I'm glad they went the way they did.
Yeah. No, it is. And exactly like you said, because it's almost like when you hear about people forgiving their oppressors, you know, I mean, me personally, it's really hard to think about being able to like forgive someone who's murdering people around us. But it is a really nice, it's almost like it shows that she can understand kind of, because, you know, her character had a really tough childhood with the mother. So it's almost like it was a nice, I agree. I think it was a nice moment for her that she could even show a little bit of humanity, even with this brutal killer.
Yeah, look, I think anytime you can make a character have that little, be a bit more empathetic, I think it endears them to the audience that much more.
Yeah. So we have a question for you from Ryan Showers, who hosts the Scream with Ryan C. Showers podcast. It's completely focused on the Scream franchise because he absolutely loved this film and was wondering, where do you see Scream 7 fitting in within the legacy of this franchise? Like, do you consider it a new beginning, a continuation of Scream 4, or the third chapter of the requel era that began with Scream 5?
That's a really great question. You know, I do think it, you know, what I love about Scream is because you don't never know who's under the mask, and it can always be someone different under the mask. I think, what I would love to see, where I'd love to see the franchise go in a perfect world, though, is just take on many faces. And try on different sizes and like have tentacles that can go, like you can have a movie about Sydney, but the next movie can be about someone else, and you know, or the movie can just be about another character, and just sort of like spread it out so that every sort of installment is different and unique to itself. This one probably fits, you know, they're not in Woodsboro, but it is sort of small town America, so I think it kind of fits with 1, 2, 3, and 4. And, you know, in 5 and 6, you know, were completely, what I loved about 5 and 6 were the Carpenter sisters, you know, and they had, and I sort of thought their sisterhood kind of mimicked Gail and Sydney to some degree. And I love that.
Hello, and welcome to Happy Horror Time. My name is Tim Murdoch.
And my name is Matt Emmert, and this is our big Scream 7 episode reviewing the latest installment in the Scream series. We've been really excited about this, and we finally get to talk about it, and we knew that we needed to invite this former guest back on the show because he is, I truly believe, the definitive voice on the Scream series. We have had him on the show before last year to talk about I Know What You Did Last Summer. And now we are inviting him back to chat about all things Scream 7 with us. His name is Ryan C. Showers, and his show is called Scream with Ryan C. Showers. So I'm going to keep saying his name, Ryan C. Showers.
Oh my God. So I know what we did last summer, right? But no, so thank you for the introduction and the compliment about being the definitive Scream voice. That's very, very kind. I really appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me to talk about this movie that this movie has occupied 3 years of my life, just the anticipation of it. So this is like one of the best weeks ever. I'm flying high.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, this is huge for you. I mean, I know, and just in case anybody watching or listening to this episode didn't hear Ryan talk a little bit about his show in our I Know What You Did Last Summer review, can you tell our audience just a little bit about your show, when it started, and what you do?
Right. So Scream with Ryan C. Showers started in the summer of 2021. And I literally just hit my 300th episode, literally 2 days ago, whenever I published my Scream 7 review. So my official review, I kind of did a solo episode and really I did like a big instant reaction analyzing the film. And it was just the perfect way to celebrate 300 episodes. But, with my show, I kind of try to have it be the film critic meets the Scream fan. But I'm reconsidering that tagline after the past couple of days of film critic reviews. So call me the Scream scholar, I should say. But no, I love talking about Scream. I kind of view Scream as like the great paintings and how people study like art history. That's how I try to study Scream. I know everything about it. I have a huge passion for it, and I love doing my show. I love different topics about Scream and approaching Scream from different ways, and like also connecting with people. It's crazy the amount of people I've met through the podcast all over the world who love Scream and want to talk about it with me. So
that's awesome. I mean, we went on your show with Jacob, our producer, to I forget what it was just a discussion about, was it
you guys?
Oh, it was about us. Okay. A very forgettable topic ourselves. No, but then I had the pleasure of going on the show with you to talk about like Halloween versus Scream, because Ryan knows that like Halloween to me is what Scream is to Ryan. It like framed my entire love of this genre for my whole life. And so that was a ton of fun. And I'm sure. And then Tim, you'll have to talk Friday the 13th at some point, I guess.
Anywhere, Mrs. Voorhees.
I will try to fit you in somewhere. Okay.
That's what she said.
I don't. I'll be fair. I'll be honest with you. I don't know as much about Friday the 13th. Like Halloween, I'm really knowledgeable. I love Halloween, like in a similar way that I love Scream, and I just don't know Friday the 13th as well. I mean, I've seen them all several times. It's just I'm not as familiar with them. So Tim, I need the education of Tim.
I mean, I'm probably pretty annoying. I was hanging out with my friends last night, and I was quoting Halloween randomly.
Halloween?
Oh my God, what a
okay, now that doesn't clock.
That was a slip. No, I went to a friend's house last night, and there's so much to incorporate Friday 13th and everything. Like, there's always a Friday 13th actor, producer, director, or something. Someone worked on Friday 13th is out there in Hollywood.
And let me tell you, one of Tim's, what I love about doing this show with Tim is that he comes up with the most random segues and connections with things that are almost like you would be like, what? How do you know that? But it's like this like crazy knowledge of the series, but not just the series Friday the 13th, the connections. Oh, Betsy Palmer was on an episode of The Love Boat, and it's like,
actually was.
I know, that's what I'm saying. I didn't know that until Tim, but like I assume that you probably know that with the Scream series. I think I know that with the Halloween series. I don't know about all of their soap opera backgrounds, but like
that's a really good question. So obviously, when you started watching Screams, like, did you follow all the actors and directors, like all their where they went after Scream? Like,
I mean, I got into Scream through friends, just like, a normal millennial who would, because I saw Scream after they came out, right? Because I was so young when they came out. And then from there, I started just watching everything and just making a big web of Scream of my life. And then here we are, the podcast, because part of my show too is not just Scream. I often try to find Scream connections or things that are in the world of Scream, like I Know What You Did Last Summer and all those 90s slashers that came out. I do a lot of Halloween on my show. I'm really proud of the show that I've made, and kind of like the nucleus of Scream and how it kind of ciphers off into different directions. And it's the thrill of my life.
Well, you should be proud, and you do a great job really like exploring different themes and analyzing things. And like, I remember when I first found out that you did a show just based on the Scream series, my initial reaction was like, oh my God, but there's only 6 movies. Like, how do you turn that into a full show? But boy, have you been able to do that. And it is impressive. Like, I've never like you never run out of topics and things, and they're all very interesting and relevant.
Well, I'm literally exploding at the seams thinking of like the different things post Scream 7. Now I'm just like, oh my God, I can't contain myself. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And like, the thing about a new Scream movie is, it's just like it opens up a whole new world. So like, I know this sounds kind of silly, but like all the episodes I've already done, like, or let's just say, ranking Sidney Prescott, ranking Gail Weathers, I get to redo those now that I have a new movie to talk about, because not only does Scream 7 get its own little part of the episode, but now everything is recontextualized. Like, Nev's performance in Scream 4, I can look at differently now that I've seen Scream 7 and almost compare it against it. So, it's just it's a wonderful time to be a Scream fan, and I'm really grateful to everybody out there who listens and who supports me. Like, I love my little friendship with Happy Horror Time. I think you guys do an amazing show, and yes, I do believe that I say that out loud when I'm listening about Tim. Like, how the fuck does he know this?
Trust me.
Rain Man skill.
It is a weird, like, it is a little Rain Man because it's like something you throw it in and I'll be like, what? But then I'll be like, oh my God, that's crazy. And he knows it.
Thank you, both of you. I just want to tell an embarrassing story real quick that I remember as I was driving over to Matt's house. I don't know if I've said this before, but I just find it so silly. So back in 1995, I made a little film. It's on YouTube called Deadly Teen. Okay. So someone was like, send that to Kevin Williamson because this was 1996. Scream just came out. So I was like, oh, good idea. I think I typed up a letter. I was like, this is like Scream, but so was not. So I sent to Kevin Williamson a tape, but it was the wrong tape. I sent him the best of Sherry O'Terry on SNL.
You have never told me that story.
Okay, so this is a good time. So I sent Kevin Williamson what I thought was my Deadly Teen, because I thought he'd be so impressed by it. And then it was really just Sherry O'Terry clips. And it was like TikTok before TikTok. It was just like me going up to the VCR and recording little clips of like my favorite skits of Sherry O'Terry, who's now in Scary Movie 6.
How did you not tell me this before we had Kevin on the show? Like, that would have been...
I was like, well, this is embarrassing. But I'll share it with Ryan C. Showers.
Also, that is such a Tim thing to do. His big moment, and you copy the wrong tape.
It's like, here's... So if he ever... I mean, there's a part of me that wants to ask, but I'm sure he never saw this mail.
I think now he's a big Sherry O'Terry fan.
There I got the address. I'm sure it was just to like... New Line Cinema. Who knows where I sent it?
And who knows? He's probably watching this right now. So you already broke the ice. You don't even have to address this with him directly. He knows. So hi, Kevin.
Yeah.
Like, I love those Sherry.
Kevin, I would say that your love of Sherry O'Terry stems from Tim's VHS tape.
Right.
Saying, watch my movie, and you watch
called Deadly Teen.
Oh my God, that is amazing. Okay, with that, I do want to jump into Scream 7, but first, again, and we'll say this at the end also, but everyone check out Scream with Ryan C. Showers. He's on all the social media platforms. Great show, and if you're a Scream fan, which you probably are if you're watching this episode, check out his show. It is worth it. Okay, so let's go into Scream 7. Now, I just want to preface this with, I know there's been a lot of controversy and craziness around the development of this film. I don't want to get into that today just because, we're Happy Horror Time. I want to focus on the movie and the love we have for the series and everything that, we thought seeing this movie. All of that has been discussed so much. And so I just want to just jump right into the movie because
just one great big movie.
Yeah, because it's, I mean, it's a Scream movie and we got a great Scream movie. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's first talk that opening scene because I thought the opening scene was very creative and different than any movie that we've seen. And I love the fact that it took place at Stu Macher's house, but that it's turned into like an Airbnb, almost like murder house event, because nowadays they do that. Like the Conjuring house, any haunted houses.
The Poltergeist house.
You can either stay there or take tours. So the fact that they set up these two characters going to the Macher house, I thought was great. Wanted your guys' thoughts on that opening.
Ryan, do you know if it's the real house?
No, it wasn't. It was a set. And I will say, for it being a set, it looks great. They spent way more detail. I'm sorry, so much more time and putting detail into that house set than they did for Scream 5. And even though I could tell it was fake, it was still I still enjoyed it and I thought it was well done. And I found the opening to be so refreshing. It feels like easily the best opening, I think, chronologically going backwards since Scream 3. It's probably in the top 5 openings of the top 3 openings of the franchise. Like I can't imagine a world where anyone would put. I know Matt, you love the Scream 4 opening. But the 4, 5, and 6 is opening over the Macher house, literally burning in front of our eyes.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree. I so much loved those two actors in the beginning. How gorgeous is she, and how likable is he? Can
I just say, like, first off, it's so funny, but and I don't, I really did think she was absolutely beautiful. And it's like, as a gay man, I'm like not looking out for like absolutely. And also in a Scream movie, I'm not looking for who's the prettiest stuff, but she was just absolutely gorgeous. But with that said, their acting, it's Jimmy Tatro, Michelle Randolph that played Scott, and Madison was so good. He's like the much more dedicated fan. She's kind of going along for the ride. But I guess what I liked about this opening was it had everything that you want from a Scream opening. It had a scary house in the middle of nowhere in the dark. It had phone calls, because part of the Stumacher experience is they got like a phone call with like even a like kind of fake cheesy Ghostface voice that like was purposely not as good as Roger Jackson. I think it was like a variation of it that asked them questions. And then they had this really freaky looking, like robotic Ghostface, which serves as jump scares. But I do want to call out one scene that me being a Halloween fan was just so fucking into.
I know.
And I know you know what I'm talking about. I think Ryan, that you know what I'm talking about. There's a part where Madison is walking backwards and there's darkness behind her, and Ghostface's mask comes out of the darkness for a little bit and then disappears. And that's very reminiscent of the scene in Halloween when Laurie is there and Michael's mask comes out. And I know that Kevin knew what he was doing because he's a huge Halloween fan. And as a Halloween fan, I appreciated it. Did you guys notice that?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Because we did it in our little movie.
I'm going to up the ante here because I think this is like a broader trend of Scream 7 that no one's really talking about. I think what Kevin did, and he deserves a lot more credit than he's getting for this, is he's kind of, I feel like Scream 7 is the slasheriest slasher version of a Scream movie we've had in decades, probably going back to the original trilogy. It just feels like such a traditional slasher. And I've even wondered, like, is that partly to blame for the critics' reviews, the critics that didn't like it, because it's so much of a more traditional, like, slasher of like the old days, as opposed to kind of like a more modern version, like Scream 6, you could even argue is more of an action movie than a horror or slasher movie. And things like that are sprinkled throughout this movie, where it's just like callbacks to, and allusions and really interesting inspired homages to, awesome horror movies like, the Black Christmas, a Texas Chainsaw, et cetera, but there's a vibe and an execution of Kevin's approach as both a director and a writer that I feel like this just feels more like a slasher.
Yeah. And, I wanted more from that opening. Like just to be longer, because I wanted I wanted everything to be longer. But I mean, I know people aren't going to sit through a 3-hour. I mean, we would sit through a 3-hour film, but
yeah, that's true. We would.
Yeah,
it's actually the longest opening, by the way, the longest opening of the franchise.
It could have been longer.
So this is my only critique with the opening, and it's I'm gonna always be genuine with people listening, and I'm not gonna just say, oh my god, I loved everything. If I did have feelings where maybe there were things I think could have been different. It's not actually with the opening. It's with the trailers giving away her hanging on the chandelier and falling onto the knife, because that was such a cool moment in the movie. I kind of wish instead they had focused the trailer on some of the misdirects in that scene rather than the final conflict of her falling on the knife, because I thought that was a beautiful, like, sort of ending for her. Obviously they didn't show him burning her alive, which was great, which was not great like I'm a sadistic fuck, but like great in terms of his burning the whole house down so he burns her alive. But that is my only critique with it. I kind of wish they didn't give that away in the trailer, because I've never seen someone hanging from a chandelier in a Scream movie and falling onto the knife.
What was really brutal about that? She got bashed in the head, like he threw her against the banister, and then she's walking up. Like I was like, oh, that's like, it seemed like this ghost face was more mean. Like I thought.
Very mean, and also just very thoughtful. And another thing that Kevin did throughout, and we see it in the opening, of course, but then throughout the film with the kills, he kind of, and I have to say, I don't even think Wes Craven ever did this to the extent that Kevin does in just this single movie. He kind of gives us like these picturesque deaths, or, like someone, like, we'll get there, of course, but, and we're doing spoilers, right?
Oh, are you kidding? Yes, we do.
Like, you have McKenna Grace, you have Asa German, you even have Anna Camp. Like, there's just something almost like picturesque. Like, he gives these, death scenes, they play out, but then they end, and it's just like, it's like a portrait. And I feel like we get that too in some way with the Mocker house, because with the house burning, it's just like, it's such a visual statement.
Now, one thing. Okay, two quick things with the opening, and then we'll move on from that. But like one thing is, just wanted to see if you guys caught this because I noticed, and I love these kind of little tiny things you have to listen closely for. When they were driving up, they were listening to a podcast, and someone was talking about Stu being seen in the background of the college party, which is such a funny Easter egg because Matthew Lillard was an extra in Scream 2 and was in the background of the party, and they placed that in there even though, Stu's not alive, as just like a little Easter egg. You can barely see it, but I love that they worked that into the podcast. I don't know if you guys heard that or noticed. It was, and then the second thing was, and I totally lost my train of thought. I can't remember.
Okay. I have a thought.
Okay.
One thought, yeah.
Just one, and then I will be done. The scene, like one thing I really love about horror films is like when someone is at a sink and their mirror opens, and you always think when they shut the mirror, the killer's going to be there. Or in this movie, she opened the refrigerator door, and then when she closed it, you think the killer's going to be there. I love when horror films do that because it's almost makes the audience like beg for the killer to be there, and I love that the killer's not.
Well, and can I just say about the opening, one thing that's underrated, I think, is like the characters themselves. Like, one of you just talked about like the actors and how likable he was and how interesting she was. The thing about like those first two openings, 1 and 2, is like we deeply cared about those characters. We care about Casey Becker and Maureen Evans, and I don't know if Scream 7 fully got there, on the same level as the 1 and 2, but I think that they were much more empathetic and interesting, and we cared about them in a similar way that we should have to make the opening be an all-timer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I also, what did you guys think of the symbolism of him burning down the Mocker house? Like, do you think that was like the killer's way of burning down the past, or was it just a statement he was trying to make because the killer was impersonating Stu? Just interested in your thoughts on why burning down the house and what it meant for the context of this movie.
I think both. I think both are. I think that it's not either or. I also think there's almost like an aspect of like fandom and entitlement with fandom being like, this is mine, and like I decide when something's over, and the Mocker House being burned is that. So, but mostly I would say that it's like the killer sending a message to Sydney like, ooh, I'm coming for you. Unfortunately, the film doesn't really go that direction, because Sydney doesn't even really react much to the Mocker House fire. But I think it's more so about the impersonating of Stu.
Yeah.
I think that these films are always like, they play them really, really smart. And I think that's the appeal of the original because like, I'm sure, I mean, you weren't alive yet. Or were you in 96?
Yeah, I was barely, yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, as someone who was 19, now 48. Like I remember that time in history in 96 where there were no horror films. And like, obviously I gravitated towards the Halloweens and the Friday 13th. So when in 1996, it was like, I mean, you would know, everyone already knows all this, but like, we were so happy that people in horror films were actually talking about like smart things to do.
That people had seen horror films like that were in horror films. Yeah, I mean, it was totally novel for that time. We never watched a horror movie where people knew the horror movie tropes and knew how to solve them. Like literally the only other one was Jason Liz when she said, I've seen enough horror movies to know anybody with a mask on is someone, but that was barely touched on. But yeah. Anyway, okay, so let's move on. So opening scene, big opening, and then we immediately get a total like fan service callback to the original because we're introduced to Tatum, Sidney Prescott's daughter, 17, same age as Sidney in Scream 1, and her boyfriend climbs through the window. But the reason why I didn't think this was, because this could have been cheesy. This could have. But the reason why I didn't think it was cheesy is because they had the boyfriend say, I was watching this movie Stab where Billy, like he was talking about the movie he was impersonating. So in that way, I really appreciated it. If they had just been talking about, I saw a random movie on and they tried to just redo that scene, then it may not have worked.
And
but
I thought he did this.
Yeah, I just love that he was talking about, he's like, we've seen Stab and Billy did this, so like I can do that. And it was just a fun little callback. And then of course they played I love the Gus version of Don't Fear the Reaper while they're making out, which is from the first movie. I just love those callbacks. And you know what, like as a fan, I'm okay with fan service.
Well, and here's the thing. The Scream fandom has had a weird relationship with Easter eggs. You know, with Scream 5, we were excited and happy and felt validated that like that Radio Silence was like showing aspects of Scream 2 and 3 and 4. And then in Scream 6, I think there was like this overabundance of Easter eggs and callbacks and references, and I think we got played out from it. I think what 7 does, I think whenever 7 does a reference or, you know, an homage, it's thoughtful and smart. And I think that Kevin, for everything Matt you just described of how knowing Ben is whenever he is doing all that stuff to Tatum, you know, but then what's beautiful about this is they use a reference of Sydney's first scene to reintroduce her through her daughter. You know, this could be interpreted as just Tatum's introduction, but I see it as the pre-introduction to Sydney's introduction, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Because we see now Sydney is in the role of a mom. First off, she goes by Sydney Evans because she has married Mark Evans, played by Joel McHale, who's the sheriff of the town. A nice little parallel moment with a Dewey sort of character. But the thing about Mark, which I love, is that he's never like a joke. He's just a really straight. I meant straight.
He is straight.
not on like just like he's never meant to be comic relief. He's just a supportive, strong character in Sydney's life, and they have a great little banter between them talking about is Tatum having sex with her boyfriend stuff. But we also are introduced, which I think is the strongest dynamic in this movie, even stronger than Sydney and Gail's dynamic. And you know, I don't know if you agree with this or not, Ryan, but like to me, the strongest dynamic in this film was Sydney and her daughter. And what I love is how it starts is that Sydney is very protective over Tatum to the fact that she doesn't want to talk about her past with her. She doesn't want to train her to be a fighter. She just wants to basically keep her in a bubble away from it. And we see a few things with her daughter reaching out, like wanting to learn more, wanting to put on her jacket from Scream 2, wanting to learn what happened. And Sydney is very resistant.
I'm so glad it was written like yes, the daughter was a little bratty, but like everything was totally understandable. I'm really glad that it wasn't like usually I like soap opera dialogue and like bitchiness, but in this I'm so glad there wasn't, because I wanted to like both girls and I did.
Yes.
Well, so the thing that I love most about this as a fan, well, first of all, Matt's like, well, I actually think the Tatum dynamic is better than the Sydney and Gale dynamic, and Ryan C. Showers was triggered. I'm just teasing. I wasn't. I agree with you.
Oh, really? Okay. No. I think I didn't know, because I love the Sydney and Gale dynamic in this too. But for me, the main focus was Sydney and her daughter, and I didn't know if you agreed. But anyway, go on.
I think that they're equal, you know. So I said this on my show, but I want to just reiterate because I think it's actually a really cool point. It's interesting how the ghost of Tatum Riley haunts this movie. You know, you have like the fact that her daughter is literally named Tatum, and then you have this idea of friendship and what it means to be a friend to Sydney through Gale Weathers, and you have Stu, who obviously dated Tatum. So it's just like Tatum is all over this movie. The ghost of her haunts the film. So I think that's very interesting. But in terms of this dynamic with Sydney and Tatum, the mother and daughter, this was so anticipated. People wanted to see this, and I have to say it did not go the way I was expecting. I was expecting something more in line with Halloween H2O, a more contentious, argumentative thing about being free, if that makes sense, like, you know, as a kid. And the thing that surprised me most about this movie is it showed Sidney Prescott as kind of, I don't want to say flawed because that sounds judgmental, but it showed Sydney not being perfect. You know, it showed her actually how she's still dealing with her trauma and how she deflects her trauma. Even in this day, she doesn't feel comfortable or doesn't know how to navigate this as a mother. And I think that there's the beautiful thing about both the Sydney and Tatum relationship and the Sydney and Gale relationship is both of those, I could argue the side, like the case for Sydney's perspective or Gale and Tatum's perspective, 110%. I understand exactly where each of them are coming from and the disagreements, you know, but I also understand where they are right and wrong. And it's just so interesting because Sydney isn't, in Scream 4 and 5, she's portrayed almost more like superhuman or more like, you know, just this, she's achieved this level of survivorhood where we don't see her vulnerable and emotionally. And here we see her incredibly emotionally tender and delicate and making often the wrong choices based on her emotions. And that just kind of, it stunned me. And it's just, again, why it's important to, you know, have characters like Sidney Prescott who have been with us for 6 films, like, and why it's still important to tell their stories. There's still so much to learn about her.
You know, you mentioned Halloween H2O, so of course I'm going to use that as bait to talk about that, of course. But you know, that is a good analogy. But that what I think is the difference between where Sydney's at versus where Laurie was at in that movie is that Laurie is still living her life in complete fear. I mean, until the end when she finally rises up. And that fear has kind of leaked out into Josh Hartnett, and he is, he's trying to get past it, but he just can't because every Halloween she is terrified. Sydney, at this point, I don't feel like she's living her life in fear. I feel like she's trying to move on, but it can be just as unhealthy if you move on without actually acknowledging the past. So it's almost like she's not in fear, but she's trying to pretend like that didn't happen. And like, even when her daughter asked you, like, well, you can just go online or watch the movies, but like, that's not actually dealing with it. So in both of them it can be problematic, obviously, because both of their kids are like, I don't know how to navigate this, but that's kind of the difference I see between Sydney and Laurie from H2O. But it is interesting that both had like dynamics of different parents.
Having an aha moment. Like, obviously Josh Hartnett's character is like sidelined because he gets stabbed in the leg, but like in this one, obviously Tatum gets a full-blown, like, gets to fight Ghostface. I mean, Michelle Williams did the heavy lifting picking up that rock.
Well, they had their big chase scene, one of my favorite chase scenes with the gate and everything. But okay, so moving on to, we see a little bit more about Sydney's life. She runs a coffee shop. Her best friend at this time is her neighbor Jessica, who has a son named Lucas who's obsessed with true crime and like wants to get Sydney on a show. Like, everybody knows who Sydney is. That's the thing. Even though Sydney doesn't really talk about, they all know what she's been through. And whereas Tatum does theater at her high school, we meet her friends, Hannah, who's McKenna Grace, Chloe, who's Celeste O'Connor, and we also, obviously, we already talked about what's her name, her Tatum's boyfriend Ben, and there, we have this theater scene with the theater director who's giving Tatum a hard time because he's like, "You're Sidney Prescott's daughter. You should be stronger." You thought he what?
The theater director was the killer.
They definitely gave that vibe.
I hoped it would be Anna Kemp. Is that her name?
Anna Kemp, yeah.
Yeah, Camp. Thank you.
Like summer camp.
Like, as soon as they sat down, I was like, oh, this feels soapy. I love it.
I knew you would love the relationship between her and Anna Camp. Like, yeah.
Oh, these two girls fight.
Like, I mean, the thing is that what I think this movie does well, just like a lot of the other Scream movies, is they do set up a lot of ancillary characters so that you think, could this person be? It's like one line from a side character makes him a suspect. When the drama teacher says, "Why aren't you as strong as Sidney Prescott?" Suspect.
Yeah.
When Anna Camp's son is like, "God, I love Sidney Prescott." Suspect.
Or when that guy put down the coffee, it said Carl. I was like, oh yeah, killer.
Random guy, Carl. Suspect. I mean, Sydney's husband, even though he's very loving. Suspect, because Tatum's boyfriend Ben. You can't watch a Scream movie without thinking the boyfriend could be a suspect. Kind of figured they wouldn't do that again, but obviously Sydney doesn't trust him. So we've already set up a lot of suspects, but interesting. Any thoughts on like the theater parallel between Tatum being in theater and Sydney having been in theater in college? Because obviously that's from Scream 2, my favorite. So thoughts on that?
Well, it's interesting because, yes, there is that parallel. And I mean, Kevin was obviously coloring close to Scream 2 with the literal jacket, but also the theater setting. And because that was such like a huge part of Scream 2, both the set piece of Cassandra and the finale, and then we can even count Scream 3 with the poster and the necklace, right? But, for me, it's an interesting observation that like they are complete opposites. And this actually surprised me about Tatum is like, she is not Sydney. She's more of a Laurie than she is a Sydney. She is very timid. I don't want to say meek, but she's very quiet, very shy. And I wasn't expecting that because I know Isabel May more so in like kind of playing more badass kind of characters. So, and it was just interesting that is the daughter that Sidney Prescott has. Like, Sydney was the lead actress. She was Cassandra, whereas Tatum is the dog in the big costume, right? And she's getting yelled about it. So like, I think it's actually very cool that they went that route and that it wasn't a surprise, and it makes Tatum's arc throughout the film growing into this fighter and survivor in the image of her mother all the more satisfying and gratifying.
100%. And you know why I like that she was more timid and meek at the beginning? Because it gave us that arc. Remember, like Sydney in Scream 2 had already been through a movie. You know what I mean? She'd been through everything in Woodsboro. So Sydney, and yes, you can argue Sydney was strong from the very beginning, even in Scream 1, but like it's almost like Laurie in Halloween. Like she's not strong until she literally has to be. I think that maybe because Sydney has kept Tatum so sheltered and so protected, it's like those kids you meet, like we all knew growing up, like that their parents were so overprotective, they were almost afraid to go out and take risks and try things. And
or when they do get out into the world, they go a little crazy.
Yes, or they go crazy. Well, that's the thing. So It's one or the other, but I loved also, can I just say again, just because I'm such a Scream 2 fanatic, I love that they finally, okay, so after every time I watch Scream 2 and she's like walking off, I'm always like, she better have left college, because why would she stay there? All her friends are dead, everything. And then did you hear when Tatum says, oh, the famous one semester Windsor College experience? And I was like, okay, good. I feel vindicated, like Sydney. Not that I wanted her to drop out of college. It's just that, like, you can't stay at Windsor College.
To the hills and started her
started working at, who knows? Maybe she took classes online. I don't know. All I know, I just love that they just acknowledge, like, the girl did not go back to Windsor College after that,
And can I just say, as because the stage in the theater is such a big part of Scream 2, I was kind of worried when I found out that there would be a theater sequence in Scream 7. Like, oh, we're going back. Like, why are we treading on old territory? But I think what they do with the theater setting is much different than Scream 2. It feels fresh and it feels like its own thing. It doesn't feel like a copycat of Scream 2. It doesn't even feel like an homage to Scream 2. It's just a high school theater. And like, I mean, a lot of people who love Scream because of the meta aspect of it probably are theater kids. So there's in a small town, like, I think it all connects and feels right. Oh
my gosh, my whole high school experience, we did 5 shows a year. As soon as there was a show, I was like, oh, I love it.
No, I mean, my senior year of high school was all theater. Like, so theater kids, that is high school for them. So let's talk about McKenna Grace's murder. Obviously, people who know McKenna Grace, because she's a big name at this point, she's in everything, probably were shocked that she got killed so early. But I look at McKenna Grace in this movie as like the CC Cooper of Scream 2. She gets one big important scene. She's the second major person, I'm counting the couple at the beginning as like the first together, to get killed. And it's a very memorable death scene. She literally is playing a part where she's in a harness and has to fly.
That, by the way.
I don't know, Peter Pan?
That's what I was thinking.
What play? Do you know what play that was, Ryan, that they were doing?
I think it was a fictional play. So it's like the fairy princess or something. I've seen the poster because, like, I mean, there's a lot of detail in this movie of, like, the background and the town and like the shop names and stuff like that. And there is a name of the play, and there's like a flyer that is floating around the internet.
Okay, so let's talk about, because I thought this was incredibly creative, because, okay, obviously people have been gutted in movies before, like Casey Becker was gutted, but nobody has been gutted this way. And again, everyone knows in this episode, we always do spoilers, so we're spoiling this, but Ghostface sneaks into, Sydney gets a call, and this is a big crazy moment, because she first doesn't really care that it's Ghostface's voice. She gets calls like this all the time. The girl's used to it. But then he tries to FaceTime her, and she sees it's Stu. And let me just say, the shot of the close-up and Neve Campbell's reaction, like, she just is so good at showing that, like, the color drain from her face, like when you would see one of the former killers. And also the way they made Stu look like he probably would have looked like if he had survived, like older, scarred, mixed with Matthew Lillard's performance, where he just totally, like, chef's kiss, encapsulated Stu again, was just so good. And that call when he's taunting Sydney and she's fighting back, and that, loved every minute, loved every second of that.
And Kevin does the Jaws shot. He gives her that moment where the main character in Jaws, when he sees the shark for the first time, there's like a cool effect with the background.
I know the shot you're talking about.
And the same thing happens here. And again, little references like that kind of blow me away as like a filmmaker and a director. I'm just like so proud of Kevin for like doing these things that I never would have thought of, but are just are there, So it's so cool. I think that Matthew Lillard's performance was excellent. I think the everything about the AI plot involving him was really well done and effective. And like, I felt like that his personality, he brought the personality of Stu from '96. Like, if Stu was actually alive today, that's who he would be. He's the same kind of guy. And of course, Neve Campbell, I'm going to say this over a million times, she is perfect in this movie. There's not a false note in her performance, not a false note in Sydney's writing. Sydney is perfect. So
yeah. No, I mean, I agreed. I think that Neve Campbell really understands his character, character.
Like, I don't even care that, like, she's 100% the focus. I mean, I saw some things online, like people like, we didn't get to know the teenagers. Well, I didn't care. I didn't come to see the teenagers. I came to see Sunday.
Rage. Like, who cares? Like, I'm sorry. This is, I if I had to choose between, like, a movie that gives us an amazing Sydney, Gail, Tatum, the twins, and Mark, and I'll throw in Anna Camp, versus, a movie where we learn, what Hannah's favorite snack is after school. I don't want that movie. I want the movie, and that's part of the slasher aspect, because a lot of the times slashers, there's victim fodder, right? So I think that like Kevin balanced the movie perfectly in terms of focusing on Sydney, which is something that people really, really want, and it shows in the box office results, right? And he developed fully the characters that truly matter, and gave us enough of the characters that kind of don't matter, just to get by.
Look, I'm not going to pretend like there weren't a lot of characters. There really were, and there were some that probably weren't as developed as they could have been had we had less characters. With that said, I agree that I would never sacrifice time with Sydney or her daughter or Gail. Even the Meeks twins, I would never sacrifice time with them to get to know Hannah and Chloe and Lucas more. I didn't need that.
Like Chloe, I think it was about to have a relationship with the Anna Camp's son.
Yeah,
Lucas. It was like all of a sudden that came. Like I was like, oh, okay. Like
they were flirty. There wasn't
but
much.
It didn't matter to me because I knew that they'd both die.
Yeah. So anyway, back to McKenna Grace's death. So Ghostface, after taunting Sydney and says, "I'm right outside the theater, like with your daughter." Now, one mistake for Ghostface is if he didn't tell her that, he probably could have gotten away with even more murders in the theater. But of course, Sydney calls her husband Mark. They start getting to the theater, but it's too late because Ghostface has killed the guy who's helping Hannah rehearse in her harness. First, just like basically throws her back and forth across the stage, and then just it's just beautiful. Like has his knife and just has her flying through to get stabbed by the knife over and over until she's literally gutted and her guts spill out. And it was this is the thing,
we've never seen that.
I've never seen that. Number two, I thought it was handled really well because it wasn't over the top gory. It was just enough, because a gutting could obviously border on over the top, but I feel like Kevin knew that you can make it bloody and gory without making people so grossed out that they don't even want to look. Like it was just enough for people to be like, oh my God, without turning away.
Can I be gross for 1 second?
Yes, please.
I wish a little bit of the guts fell on Ghostface mask. That's all.
Interesting. No, I mean, and like, because it happens very quick, it's like a one slit, boom, everything falls out. And that's part of the shock value, and I think that's part of what makes the sequence great. It's such an innovative thing, and again, the aesthetics of that sequence in particular are stunning. I think it's one of like the top 5 shots, like mise en scène of the entire franchise.
Yeah. Obviously, Sydney gets in and she sees Ghostface and tries to shoot at him, but of course he's gone or whatever. But this is this is one of my, if not my favorite moment in the movie, because the thing is, a lot of Scream movies and a lot of horror movies, after a big attack like that, they give you some time to relax and kind of like de-stress and stuff. This doesn't, because right away we go, Sydney and Mark take Tatum home and they're like doing the, okay, we're running, we're getting out of here. And right away we get into another attack scene because Ghostface has been hiding in their attic, which anytime there's anyone in the attic, it's fucking scary.
Yeah.
And he drops out of the attic and basically, again, you're thinking, okay, we're going to get like it's almost like after her big attack in part 1, you have that whole scene at the police station and there's a little bit of humor and then she gets a call and we have a while till we get an attack. This one is just like no holds bar. We get right into now. I mean, she's not even safe at home. And it's a great family moment because Ghostface takes Tatum, knife to her throat. Mark, who I love Mark in this movie because
I was like, he's a fighter. Like I was impressed with all that.
And good for Joel McHale. Like I know he's known for more comedic roles, but like he was so good at being just a tough, supportive, like husband/father. He fights with Ghostface. Of course, Ghostface has to throw him down the stairs. And then we get Sydney and Tatum together running to like a panic room, which of course Sidney Prescott would have, and having the sequence with the wall. Now, I will say this wall sequence was one of my favorites in the movie. Some of it was spoiled by the trailer. Again, whatever. Trailers are always going to spoil things, but like, I just thought I'd never seen anything like that, and like wondering where he was going to stab, if he was going to get them, like when he was going to stab. It was just a great suspenseful scene. Thoughts?
And the music. So, I mean, I love music. I mean, Harry Manfredini from Friday 13th, but Marco, I'm not going to try to say that last name.
Beltrami.
Thank you. The music was pumping. I thought, I love the score.
It's pumping. Tim was like,
Well,
I mean, I was dancing to it, and Matt goes, sit down. And I was like, listen, I love it.
and you're like creeping.
Yeah,
No,
it's like
no.
but like the suspense, the camera angles, like the visuals, the way that it's edited together, both outside, inside, the sound design in that sequence, so impressive. Like, if you would have told me, if you'd have showed me that scene, like, without the context, and I told me like, oh yeah, this is a man who directed, this is his second film, I probably wouldn't have believed you because it is so well done. I think that's one of Kevin's best directed sequences by far.
I mean, a great chase. I mean, to me, this whole sequence ranks up there with Scream 2, Gale in the film studio, going from the halls and back and forth and then getting into the studio and locking herself in. Like, I mean, it really did have that kind of suspense. And so that's why I just like when I've seen some criticisms, no suspense, I was like, did we watch the same movie? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. That scene alone, I think, is so strong.
Yeah, it's like its own contained scene. Anyway, they get out, Ghostface fights with Mark, and then he gets run over by Gale Weathers and the Meeks twins in a classic entrance that, did your theater clap at that moment, Ryan?
It did, and like my sister literally yelled, "That's our girl right there!" So
I mean, it's like every theater clap because she runs over Ghostface and like gets out in her beautiful, was it purple or red, the suit?
Red,
yes.
I've seen like, I would say 1,000 movies with Matt, and it's very rare that he claps, and Matt was clapping and I went like this. So it's like, we're not at the opera.
I was clapping so many times. There were so many like moments that I was just like, I just was so, like was feeling. But yeah, great entrance. And they unmask Ghostface, and it's that creepy guy Carl from the coffee shop, and everybody's like, what? I don't get it. And the only thing that they do is find out that he was a patient at Fallbrook Mental Institution, which is a clue. But what I did think was creative about this is that, number one, we've never had a Ghostface unmasked like middle of the movie. Yes, opening scene of 6, but that was leading to other Ghostface killers. Second, it's almost like a clue. I feel like we never had it's like a clue to finding the real Ghostface killers or the other Ghostface killers. It was just something different. And everybody's always talking about, oh, these Scream movies are doing things the same. But like this was very different. And I thought that was unique. And it kind of launches Gale and Sydney into their investigation of Fallbrook Mental Institution. What did you guys think when you first saw Carl? And did you even remember him?
I only did because like they had such a close up on the coffee. It said Carl, so I was like, "Oh, he's the killer."
Say that again, Tim.
Carl.
No, I did, of course. I mean, like, the look that Sydney gives, like, nothing in a Scream movie is on accident. So I didn't know how he played into it, of course, but it was a nice setup and a nice payoff, I think.
What if it was just a disgruntled coffee person?
Or what if it was like,
he goes,
I mean,
you didn't make my coffee right. I'm gonna
or what if like they didn't even recognize him? It's like, bland, and they're like, who's
People
that?
are weird about coffee.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry.
Can I just say, like, I wanted to. This is the entrance of Gale. This is going to be one of the most iconic Gale Weathers moments ever. I was so worried about Gale Weathers going into this movie because of how she was handled in Scream 6. I know she has that amazing sequence in Scream 6 with the phone call, but in my opinion, the rest of the movie kind of assassinated her character and assassinated her character development over the past, 5 films. I can't get over how good Courtney Cox is in this film. She is perfect. Like, I feel like it's the Scream 4 Gale in terms of the energy and the comedy, but with the weight and the depth of like the 5 Gale, but times 10. It was just like I think it's one of the best Gale Weathers we've ever seen. People laughed at her consistently throughout the entire film, and this once she entered, it was just like I was just in awe of her and awe of Sydney. Like, I literally have no notes about Sydney and Gale, and I have made thousands of posts over the last 3 years advocating for Scream 7 to do Sydney and Gale justice. And I felt, as somebody who has very high standards for those characters, that, again, 100% flawless, perfect.
And that's the thing, like, I didn't feel like, I was like, oh, because Gale's had amazing chase scenes, and the fact that she didn't really get chased in this movie, I was totally fine with that. I was like, okay, she's being funny.
I wanted to bring that up. First off, a couple things from what you said. It's so funny you said Scream 4, because that's exactly the Gale that came to mind with me, with the wit and the funny comments. Like, Gale knowing that this is what she says, but she also had the emotional depth, like you said, of 5. Like, you said it perfectly, exactly what I was thinking. When it comes to the chase scene, because I've heard some criticisms like, Gale didn't get a chase. And I was just like, look, she had a huge chase in part 6 and got stabbed a bunch of times. Like it's like Dewey getting stabbed over and over again. You got to give the character a little bit of a break. And I don't think that made her any less important. She was there for Sydney as support. She investigated with Sydney and she interviewed Cindy.
I like Sydney.
That's what she does. And so we didn't need another chase scene. We just had part 6 where, and also give the girl a break. She's got nerve damage.
I actually thought she was going to die. Like I was happy she was in
Kevin would never kill Gail, I don't think. No.
Scream 6 neglected Gail emotionally, I felt. And just because we got the big physical action suspense with her, you know, I feel like that's all that Scream 6 was with her. And I feel like they needed to repair her, who she was on the inside, her spirit, how she was absorbing everything with Dewey, how she was absorbing her own attack. This movie had a huge challenge of doing that, you know, shaping her relationship with Sydney and kind of giving us a glimpse of who Gail Weathers is right now. And I think that they did that on all fronts.
My favorite scene, well, no, I mean, I have many favorite scenes, but when Sydney's just kind of looking over and seeing Gail like shaking, I was like, oh, that's sad.
It is.
Taking pills.
Yes, I was like, oh, she's...
Yeah, that Gail did not tell her about, and that she's trying to hide. And she's grabbing her arm. It's so sad. It has literally brought me to tears both times I've seen it.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the scenes that kind of got tears in my eyes. But like, yeah, it is sad because you're seeing like a woman who has been through. And if anybody knows about how dealing with stabs and chases and that trauma, Sydney, no, not me. Sydney knows. Oh yeah, me. God, it's been a rough life. Running from Ghostface my whole life. No, and it also kind of puts Sydney as perspective. Wow, I didn't know that New York was that serious because, you know, there's such focus on this movie about Sydney skipping New York, you know, which is a little bit of a meta commentary of Sydney skipping Scream 6, but it put it in an emotional perspective of her seeing, oh my God, like, because I'm sure Gail didn't tell Sydney every detail about what happened. She probably said, I was attacked, I'm okay, da-da-da-da. And now Sydney is seeing the real, like, consequences of, oh my God, that was brutal. Maybe I should have been there for her. We could have done this together. I could have helped. And so it really did resonate with me that she was kind of seeing, oh my God, I wasn't there for Gail in this last movie, and she wasn't here for the fans, but she did it for good reasons. Moving on to Fallbrook Mental Institution. I love a good mental institution scene. I just, you know, it brings back a Smith's Grove for me. And they go and they meet Ethan Embry, who all I could think about was, what was the movie with Jennifer Love Hewitt he was in? Hardly Wait. Yeah. I mean, that's the
and he was
Ethan
also in Dutch, right?
Dutch?
With Ed O'Neill, 1991. What?
Oh, Tim's even older than me. Okay, so Ryan's like, what the fuck? Okay, so we hear that. Look, one thing I'm going to say about this movie that does really well with Stu is that, and I'm admitting this, and maybe this makes me dumb. I don't care. It really made me think, is Stu alive? No, of course he's not. Wait, maybe he is he not? And I didn't feel dumb because even Sydney and Gail, who at the beginning were like, of course he's not alive. Wait, is he alive? Like, and I think that's what the whole fan base of these movies have been arguing for years. Is Stu alive? He couldn't be alive. No, he's dead. Wait, but maybe he could come back. Like, and so they played on that so well. And Ethan Embry's character, Marco, at the institution recognizes Stu and says, oh yeah, he was John Doe. He was a patient here. He checked in the 90s after a lot of head trauma and just checked out a couple weeks ago. So you're thinking, wait, that sounds like Stu, but how would people not know about it? I'm wondering, did you guys throughout this movie think Stu could actually be alive?
Yes, but I was also thinking it could have been Kelly Ripa's husband because he was a reporter. And I was like, oh, he's so handsome. I was like, handsome people can be killers.
Honestly, no, I did not think Stu could be alive. But my sister, she is like as deep of a Scream fan as I am. But she's not online. She is so not. She has no idea about the controversy, like of anything, right? So she actually looked at me and she said, "Is Stu really alive?" So I mean, it worked on her as someone who's watched these movies for 20 years and is really intense about it. So I think Kevin did his job in that respect.
And the thing is, it's like I knew deep down that there's no way Stu could be alive, but the way that they played it made me second guess things that I knew to be true, which is, what the killers were trying to do. They're trying to fuck with Sydney and make her, and make her go crazy and think Stu's, after. But anyway, so they're starting to wonder, is Stu alive? What's going on? And they find out that Carl, the first unmasked killer, was an inmate there also. So they're like, okay, is Stu working with Carl?
There was a picture of Tori Spelling.
Yeah, and he had a picture of Tori Spelling.
Don't ever forget.
That was so funny. I'm just like, oh, Sydney and Stab 1. one? Like, is he a Stab fan? Like, yeah. So anyway, we get to moving on to like a lot of the kills. First off, Sydney decides that she is going to finally let Gale, after all these years, interview her, and they do it as a tactic because they want to lure the killer in by kind of almost joking like, oh, Stu, you can call me. Like, if it's Stu, you want to be the main guy. But what Sydney doesn't know is that Gale, of course, is not going to play it easy with her, and she's going to ask her tough questions. And whereas they just start talking a little bit about general what's going on, she starts to ask her about her kids, and Sydney is not having that. And there's a nice moment where Sydney kind of just like takes off the microphone and leaves and gets mad at Gale for going too far and says, "What would you do if I asked about Dewey?" And that was a really great scene of acting from Courtney Cox. You could see the tears in her eyes, talking about how she just tries to get through the day. And I just thought that was a nice emotional scene that set up the dynamic between them well.
My favorite scene in the film is it's not even the interview itself, it's the aftermath of them fighting off screen. Exactly, Matt. But I have to say this scene with Gale and Sydney is very deep, and I think it says a lot about both of the women. The way I interpret that scene is that Gale, because they aren't getting the killer to call, they're waiting around, and he's not calling. I assume that Gale went there and started asking those questions to try to bait him even more. You know what I mean? To get him more interested. And I don't think Sydney recognized that. But again, from Sydney's perspective, she's reacting emotionally and trying to protect her kids. So it's a brilliant scene, and there's layers, and you can understand both perspectives.
You know what I also like about that? Because look, Gale and Sydney's relationship has been complicated throughout the years. And as much as I love them loving each other and, of course, being really good friends, and that's what I want, I do still like to have a little bit of that challenging each other dynamic, because that's what makes their
what's that called? Frenemies?
Yeah, and that's what makes their relationship interesting. Like, I think if it was just all a love fest, it wouldn't be as interesting as what we're used to with Sydney and Gale. So I did like that there was a little bit of tension between them, Gale pushing Sydney, Sydney being like, what the fuck? Of course, we're still getting to the point where they're still there for each other, but like, because we again see Gale's nerve damage and Sydney realizing that, oh my god, this has really affected her.
I mean, if you really think about it, it's such a weird thing to think about. They've been stabbed and shot so many times.
I mean, like the amount of wounds Sydney and Gale, I was going to say even, and Mark have this. Oh, we forgot about the Mark scene. Mark has a great scene where it's really scary because, first off, I love Black Christmas, and the amazing opening scene of the original Black Christmas. The killer, jumps through like dry cleaning plastic, and it's a great setting because Mark is in their garage. They're doing work on it. There's all this plastic coming out.
I love a movie that when someone's walking, like a house is getting redone. I love that look.
It's such a great, also he's alone, it's dark, and the killer jumps out. But the thing is, the killer stabs him multiple times, and they lead you to believe, oh my God, did they kill Mark? Like Sydney's perfect little family unit. And I've got to say, I bet 75% of the audience thought he was dead.
Oh,
really?
Yeah. He was so white. I was like, he's barely hanging on.
Like I just thought, wow, not only, God, they're not going to give Sydney like her husband, because then you're like, well, God, could they kill her daughter too? Like, are they going to really make this that dark for Sydney? But they leave you one thinking that he's dead. But on the other side of town, we have Tatum assembling her friends at like the bar that Chloe works at, because the Meeks twins, Mindy and Chad, are saying like, we got to get all the suspects in a room. And this is what I will say, like, of course, Mindy is like the Randy / Kirby character. She has been for the last two movies. But what I will say about this movie is that this may be controversial, but in 5 and 6, she kind of annoyed me a little bit, and she didn't annoy me in this movie. I just felt like she was more mature. She didn't go on too long. She was funnier in this one. Is that weird?
No.
Listen, I criticize Mindy in Scream 6 very harshly. Most people in Scream 6, most people within like the people I know, my community, the people I've spoken with about Scream 6, Mindy is always a negative. She's viewed as annoying and not effective, and just kind of too meta, too jokey, and not written well, And I think this is the difference between Jamie Vanderbilt and Guy Busick versus Kevin Williamson. I think Kevin made her work so much better. I think the writing is so much clearer. It connects with Jasmine and her spirit more. But I have to say, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I am a stan of Mindy. I was so blown away by Jasmine, and it's in the way way that like Scream 7 kind of fixed Gale Weathers from Scream 6 and then some, they did the same thing with Mindy. They made her so much better than and improved upon everything from Scream 6, made up for it, and then went the distance. I was so thrilled with her. I put out a post today. She is my top 5 like best performances of acting in Scream 7. I loved her speech. I loved her personality throughout. She was amazing. And I have to say, I hate to say this, but I do think Sam and Tara held Chad and Mindy back. I think seeing them as siblings, as like twins, as brother and sister with that banter, so much more effective and a better use of their time and a better use of their characters than kind of being kind of side saddled behind Sam and Tara, which is crazy because you have Sydney and Gale who are even bigger and larger in some respects than Sam and Tara. Yet I feel like I know Chad and Mindy better after Scream 7 than I ever did in Scream 6.
It's just funny because I never found Randy annoying. I never found Kirby annoying, but for some reason Mindy didn't land with me in 5 and 6. And I just thought it came off a little bit pretentious the way she talked to people about the rules. But in this one, yeah, I agree. Like, I thought her and Chad had a great dynamic. I love that he would call her on shit, and stuff. But I thought that it was just enough commentary without going overboard. But I also like that they gave Mindy a purpose beyond being the movie freak, that she was an aspiring reporter now. And I'm like, oh my God, that makes sense because she has that I want to be in the spotlight. I want to talk to everyone type of thing. So it gave them more of a purpose, like you said, than they ever did in the other movies because they were side characters. Now they're like almost like Gale's sidekicks, but in a way that was much more effective than any cameraman like Gale has had. Like poor Gale's cameraman, well, the first one died. The second one had some great lines, but never got much to do. Yeah, he survived, but he just didn't have much to do. But in this one, it's like having the twins be working with Gale. It was great. It was a great way to integrate them, and it did make me like them more. But so we have a sequence in this bar where a bunch of people get killed and attacked. I mean, I don't go through everything, but like Ghostface comes there. First, he taunts. He finally does call Sydney and say I love how many times Stu says, I'm right outside your daughter's this. I'm right outside your daughter's that. I'm like, well, Sydney, just stay with your fucking daughter. No, but I know she didn't want to involve Tatum. But so they first stab Lucas, and it's in a way where you're like, because it's off screen, you're like, could this be like him faking it? But poor Chloe gets like dragged down the bar.
It was like she was like Sydney, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, why is Ghostface spending so much time killing Chloe?
It's almost like at first I was like, well, like just get on with it. But it's like when he throws her down the bar, like, and she gets all the glass in it. I thought that was effective because I was thinking he was just going to stab her to death. So it was different and it was new. But the big crazy death of this was Lucas's, because the killer picks him up and puts his head on like the spigot or whatever that has beer come out of it, and then pushes it so that beer and blood comes out of his mouth. I mean, look, for people who love creative, gory kills, it was one of the most memorable probably in this franchise. It was sort of comedic, but like that's what Scream is. It has comedic moments. What did you guys think of Lucas's death with the beer?
It was the elevated version of fuck Bruce Willis, I think, but in the best way. And again, like what a stunning visual that it creates, and creative, and it gets a laugh from the audience, it gets a reaction from the audience, and I'm a fan.
Tim, what did you think?
I thought it was gross, but I liked it.
And then we have Tatum off with her boyfriend, and Tatum discovers that Ben has been messing around with deep fakes and is pretending to be Stu on his computer. So of course that makes him a suspect.
Did you think he was part of Ghostface? Like, because he was. Why would he make mean things against his girlfriend's mother?
You know what I think? It's kind of like an Angelina in Scream 3 situation where you could watch Scream 3 and think, she could have been involved, technically, and Roman got rid of her just to, cut the fat out. But like, do I think he was involved? No, but he could have been. We could read the film that way, that he was part of Jessica and Marco's string of Ghostface. So I don't know.
I don't think he was involved, but I think it was a nice way of setting him up because it made people question it. I look at it as he was just trying to see like how easy can you say stuff that Stu was saying, and he was just kind of doing it to see if he could turn himself into Stu. Of course, did he really have to do it by saying, Sydney, you bitch? Like he could have just been like,
likes.
I like pizza. And
we got the confirmation he wasn't a part of it because he was stabbed.
Yes, he was stabbed. So of course, after Tatum thinks it's him and smashes a laptop on his head, which really must have fucking hurt because laptops are heavy. Tatum has this long chase scene in the town, and it's been curfew, so no one's there. And Ben finally catches up with her just to get stabbed to death by Ghostface. But of course, Tatum makes her way to the coffee shop because Sydney. Now, I have a question for you because this one thing I didn't understand. When Sydney gets the call at the news station and knows that she has to get to her daughter, she goes to her car and it's like she can't get in it. Why couldn't she get in her car to drive there?
I assume that the keys were left inside, and like she rushed out, not thinking about where her keys were. She gets to the car, she's like, "Fuck," and then just starts for the tavern, which allegedly is supposed to be close by.
Yeah, I didn't. That's what. Did you notice?
I know that I'm not. My car is like old school with a key, so I know that people have cards to open it, and if you don't have the card, you can't open.
You mean the fobs card?
Yeah, whatever. No, but they have that. But there's also cards, right? Like it looks like a credit card
to open cards.
Yeah.
I mean.
I can't defend you here, so
it's okay.
I mean, look, I am not a car expert, so there very well could be some cars I don't know of that have cards to open it. I just know like the fobs. Anyway, she doesn't use her car. She's running and she realizes, well, fuck, I'm not going to make it to Tatum in time, but I can FaceTime her and direct her to the coffee shop where there's a gun. Problem is, Ghostface knows the code to the coffee shop and is able to get in. But we have a great scene where she's like, Sydney's remotely telling Tatum where the gun is, lock herself in the office, and where to shoot him through the door.
And she couldn't move because it kept saying no signals. So that heightened the stakes.
Yeah, and it was a good like use of technology for it's like, okay, either we're going to have Sydney there fighting him with her, or we can give Tatum her moment, which she needed, but we can still have Sydney involved remotely. And she's kind of coaching Tatum, all the things you wanted to see from a mother-daughter thing, interaction, where to shoot him. I will say Tatum, for having never used a gun, was great because I think I would have probably shot myself.
Did your audience freak out when she put down the gun for like 1 second on the table? Everyone's like, oh.
Yeah. Well, the brilliant thing about this scene, and this tells me like this is like Kevin Williamson and like his brilliance, and like what we saw with like the original films and the films he wrote is like it's like show not tell, and there's a very organic growth in both Sydney and in Tatum. See, like that's what you want from like a writer, is somebody who can grow both of your characters in different directions. Sydney has to let her guard down and let Tatum grow, and she can't help her. She can only explain, and Tatum has to actually do the growing herself, and we see her change in front of our eyes versus being told that she's changing or she's becoming this badass. So that was such a brilliant brilliantly written scene, a brilliantly acted scene by both of them, by Nev and Isabel. And again, it really showed Tatum as truly vulnerable. Like, speaking of Laurie Strode, like they're just the body language and the tears and like the vulnerability that Isabel May puts into that scene, but then grows into and out of as she defeats the Ghostface, or what she thinks. It's so good. Oh my God. I can't praise that scene enough.
I that's someone I haven't talked about in this episode yet, Isabel May. I've got to say, like, I thought she was incredible in this movie. I did not know who she was. I hadn't seen her in anything before. I thought she played the character so well. It was so believable. I thought her emotions were just like raw and just like understated. And I don't mean that in a way like not enough. I mean understated in a way that you can relate to, because a lot of times, like when Tim and I watch a horror movie and they're like, hi, like it's like they're delivering their lines like they're in a play.
I mean, she played it genuinely scared, because we've seen a lot of horror films that are just like, okay, I'm in the scene, but my face isn't telling you there's any emotions there.
Yeah.
I was reading the emotions,
the tears, the like when she was angry at her mom, when she was really thought when she couldn't do it, when she didn't believe in herself. It was just the vulnerability she shows. It was just great. I mean, they really picked the right girl.
I mean, I'm a broken record, but like if the actor's scared, I'm scared. So it's like I need to see it.
So just to move on to the big finale, because I will say the theater was going nuts when after she shot Ghostface and Sydney said, he's down, you got him. When she was leaving the room, all the theater was like groaning, because it's like, no, girl, stay in there. But Sydney wants her to shoot him in the head because, as we know from these movies, you can't finish them off till you shoot him in the head. Of course, the killer's not dead. And when Tatum tries to get away, then there's another killer coming at her. And both killers like kind of go after her. And then it's just like darkness.
Did you think
and
the
you're
movie
like,
was over?
No, I didn't.
We've never seen a fade to black like that or slow motion in that way. So again, I love to see Kevin Williamson kind of innovating the Scream formula in that respect on a technical level. But my favorite part as a OG Sydney person of the film. I guess I said the Gale and Sydney scene, but it's my second favorite part is the scene where Sydney arrives at the coffee shop, and we've been every time we get a Ghostface call, it's been Matthew Lillard. It hasn't been Roger Jackson. And whenever Sydney arrives and she sees Tatum's gone and she gets the call, it's Roger Jackson's voice, and it's like it's all the more haunting and scary because it's like, ooh, he's back, as after seeing Matthew Lillard and not really having Roger Jackson probably since Act 1, right? And it's just a classic Nev Campbell, Sidney Prescott original trilogy performance in the face and the eyes and the tears. It's like a mini version of the Sydney in Scream 3 phone call in the police station. So
who's calling?
Who's calling?
Yes. But you know what I mean? It was just so emotionally effective. Like Nev Campbell's best moment, in my opinion. And also just so interesting and conniving of the killer to use Sydney's family and to take it to her home. I think the line something about like where the heart is.
Yeah.
And it's so symbolic because then in the finale, we go to Sydney's house. That's the location of the finale. And the location of the finale is a very sacred thing to a Scream movie. So it's just so smart all around.
It is great. And you're right. Like we had Roger Jackson when she first gets the phone call before it switches to FaceTime, which is the usual hello Sydney, but it wasn't the same depth because at that time she's just like, it's another prank call, and then it was mostly Stu. So getting Roger Jackson's voice back then was really great. And also it sets up a finale where obviously she can't go to the cops. She needs to go herself, just like Scream 3, when it's like, she's like, oh God, if I don't go, like they're going to kill my daughter. And basically they've kidnapped her daughter. So she goes home, and then we get the scene with AI deepfakes. Now, look, I've been seeing online, some people have been knocking this. I couldn't disagree more because as a fan of specific killers from these movies, knowing that they're dead and not wanting them to do any sort of like, dumb ghost haunting thing, I wanted to see them in certain ways. And obviously you can't resurrect them, but with AI and deepfakes, you can bring them back to taunt Sydney. And that's what she gets as she's going through her house at first. She first has Stu on there who taunts her. Then she has the big one that they were keeping a secret, my favorite ghost face, Mrs. Loomis. Oh my God, I loved it. And then they had Roman, your favorite ghost face, taunting her, talking about being a brother. But what I loved about this scene is that Sydney, knowing that all these people were dead, she was interacting with them. Like we got dialogue, like when Mrs. Loomis came on and said, you killed my Billy. And she's like, and I do it again. I just loved that because it's like, you don't get more Mrs. Loomis scenes with her because she's dead, but we did get one. And Scott Foley using like the brother aspect and bringing that in. And then Dewey, who it made it more sentimental, like taunting her about that everyone she knows dies, basically. But I loved that. I was interested in your guys' thoughts. Too much fan service or just enough?
Absolutely, and not enough. It's like I'm sorry. Let me just rephrase. I got really passionate. I think the criticism of this sequence is so dumb. People saying, "Oh, well, they don't look like they would be. They don't look like themselves." I know, but like they're missing the point of like this is supposed to be AI. It's supposed to kind of look somewhat artificial and not polished and perfect, like with the backgrounds and stuff. I thought this was so good. I loved the choices of who was in this montage and who wasn't. I think Mrs. Loomis was a wonderful addition, a real shock for the audience. And I think it was important to have Sydney's brother there talking about family now that Sydney's family is literally on the line again in a different way. And I also, just how brilliant is it to go through this montage of killers, who all revealed themselves to Sydney in a finale right as the finale is about to happen and another killer is about to reveal themselves. It's just like the perfect kind of crescendo moment before the reveal.
What did you think, Ian?
Absolutely agree. I mean, like, obviously we were lucky to have the trilogy of the Halloween films, but like other than Halloween films, they didn't do stuff. I mean, like we always want people from the past. I mean, people that obviously all three of us, this is a love fest. We've had a relationship with Scream for 30 years, but I mean, some people weren't even born. But like, I love any kind of callback like that. Like I will never not like if they did a Friday 13th and had Amy Steele or Dana Kimmel, I would just be like, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I would knock and be like, I'm angry.
If they had AI versions of like different, like either way, like the fact that we just got these people back that were such celebrated people in the series, like everyone that I know loves Mrs. Loomis. Everyone loves Roman. Most people, I think the one person missing was Jill, which would have been good because if she came on after Roman saying like, hey, cuz, like, especially because, you know, it was like brother, it was from Billy's mother who taunted Sydney to her half brother to her cousin. But again, we still got enough people, and Dewey hits her right in the
AI
heart.
her?
Can they AI Emma? Probably not without her permission.
Right?
Yeah.
She's like, sure.
Yeah, so I absolutely loved it. Like, I don't give a shit if people don't like fan service. I'm a fan, and it's called fan service for a reason, and so I loved it.
I never even knew that term until you guys.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, fan service, Easter eggs, all those. So we get to they have Tatum tied up just like Stephen Orth in the beginning in the backyard, and the first ghost face that has her unmasks, and it's Marco, who is Ethan Embry, who was the employee at the Fallbrook psychiatric place, and he basically says that he works in AI and was able to fake, and he kind of laughs at her, and he's like, you really thought Stu was alive? The guy's dead. But the thing is, at that point, you're like, wait, what? Why would he care
was
about?
Also obsessed with Jennifer Love Hewitt.
And Can't Hardly Wait, yeah. But then we get to our main mastermind Ghostface, which happens to be her neighbor Jessica. And the thing about Anna Camp is that Anna Camp plays an unhinged person so well. I don't know if you watch the show, Ryan, but she played twins on that show. One was crazy, one like kind of became crazy. She's just great at it. Pitch perfect. She's a little unhinged. So it's like I knew she could play a character like this well. Now, this is where I'm going to get to a point where I feel like we're going to have to discuss this, because I will say, for me, the motive was the weakest part of this movie. Now, it didn't affect my enjoyment of this movie at all. It didn't make me think like, oh, God, this movie sucks in any way. As you can tell from this whole review, I loved so much of it. I will say that I was a little confused on the motive. What I got from it was that Jessica had been obsessed with Sydney as a final girl and her book Out of Darkness, and it kind of got Jessica to realize that she can be tough, and she ended up killing her abusive husband. And then when Sydney disappeared from the New York killings and just didn't want to be part of the spotlight, she felt really let down. She got really angry. She went a little nuts. And then she realized, well, I need to get rid of that excess baggage. Let's kill Sydney and create a new final girl and her daughter. And it's funny, now as I'm explaining this, I'm like, oh, wait, maybe I do get it a little more. But anyway, I'm just wondering, because I need your guys' thoughts, because that has been the most controversial part of this movie, this third act, this killer reveal, this motive. Full thoughts on the motive and the reveal.
Tim, you can go first, because I've a lot.
Okay, so obviously, as a Friday 13th fan, when Mrs. Voorhees just comes out of nowhere rolling up in her Jeep, and I was like, oh, she's fun. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I loved, and so for me, it all goes back to Friday 13th. Like, it was a fun girl, and I was like, I don't even care about a motive. Like, I was like, listen, crazy people are crazy. They're gonna do crazy ass things. So I was totally fine with these two girls fighting it out in a garage. I was like, this is great. I love the ending.
Well, Tim is actually kind of hitting on my point before, it's just so funny. We're on the same wavelength here. First of all, I didn't even think about Mrs. Voorhees, but interesting. Before I talk about the motive, I just want to give Anna Camp a really big round of applause, because her acting in this was excellent. Like, her monologue and her delivery, oh my God, it kind of blew me away. I would probably say, in terms of just bare bones acting, I would put her in the top 5 Ghostface killers. She sold the performance so well. She inhabited the character so well, and her performance made me understand the character of Jessica and the mentality that made me understand the motive and why she was doing this. I don't see this as a particular motive in the same way that Roman and Jill and Mickey and Mrs. Loomis all had a motive of revenge or greed or fame or whatever. It's not like a 3-point bullet plan of like, I want to do this, I want to achieve this. I see Jessica and Anna Camp's character as kind of a portrait of a really crazy person, someone who, is deeply mentally ill. And unfortunately, because Sydney is a public figure and she has this history, Sydney is just kind of intersecting with someone who is very unwell. And I see her, even when she's explaining all these things, it's like the dead husband, Out of Darkness. Oh, I was in a mental hospital. My son sucks too. I hate this. You weren't in New York. It's almost like talking to a crazy person. Like, whenever their synapses are just going all over the place. You you can't follow it. And they literally call attention to it where she can't remember her train of thought. And that's how I see her, and that's how I understand her. And it actually kind of makes sense. And I would even argue that it's kind of almost like revolutionary and kind of groundbreaking for a Scream movie to give us the killer like this. And I think this is partly why it's being met with resistance by the fandom and just the general public, because we've been trained to expect a killer to give us a monologue with a plan and like their bullet points and a specific motive of why they're doing this. And I think Jessica's is a kind of more simple yet complex in that she is just an extremely unwell person, a crazy person, and that's and she just happened to intersect with Sydney and become obsessed with her because of Out of Darkness. And like, you know, not to take it even too meta, but we see how it is when people online get obsessed with like this parasocial relationship with someone they allegedly idolize, and they take it to dark, crazy places.
No, I think
refresh my memory. Who shoots Ethan Embry?
Sydney does.
Okay, because I thought it would be even more unhinged if Jessica blew him away.
Yeah, well, usually there's always a killer that kills the other killer. You know, that makes a lot of sense. I think these are my thoughts. Now, I know that people were already, as soon as Anna Camp was announced and Matthew Lillard was announced, people were all thinking, oh, she's got to be Stu's sister or something like that. Now, that would have been totally expected, but I think what I was hoping for was some more of a connection to Stu specifically. And this is why, because they chose to use Stu as the main avatar for all the phone calls and to pretend that Stu was alive to fuck with Sydney. And then the killers really had nothing to do with Stu. They were obsessed with Sydney. And I guess that's where some of my confusion lies. I guess that's where I was thinking, oh, maybe it would have made more sense if one of them was directly connected to Stu. With that said, I totally understand why they didn't want it to just be Stu's sister or Stu's illegitimate child.
Or she married her brother.
Because they've done that before, so I get it. But that's where I think I was coming from. I was like, you're using Stu so much that like I would think that the killer would have some sort of Stu mentality or Stu connection a little bit more than those had.
Well, I actually have an answer to this. The way that I understand it is, and it's very subtle because again, I haven't said this once yet, but this is a very lean movie. I would say this is the leanest, most concise Scream movie to date. There's not a lot of fat on this. There's detail and depth, but it's just not on the surface. It's not being talked at you. It's a very lean and clean cut movie. I interpreted Ethan Embry as being more obsessed with Stu, and he's the one with the Stu obsession. You know, he lies about Stu being at the mental institution. He talks about him to Sydney before Jessica comes out. So I thought I took it as he was the Stu guy and she was the unhinged Out of Darkness lady.
I mean, I see that. I think I didn't get from Marco that he was obsessed with Stu, but I did get that he was able to create the avatars and had that. But I also realized they all had the connection from the psychiatric hospital. That's how they got Carl involved. And so, but you do bring up a good point of like, we haven't had, I mean, obviously every killer is unwell in some way, but we haven't had people that are just so unhinged that they're not even making sense during their monologue at the end. You know, usually like Mrs. Loomis and Roman, it's like they wrote a thesis on their motives. I mean, they were so clear. Of course, they're fucking crazy, but like they were so clear on why they wanted to go after Sydney. And I think maybe that's why people are reacting this way. But I do think with time, people are going to warm up more to this motive and reveal, including myself. I think that like when you watch it more, you're going to be like, you know what, that is creative, but it isn't the same thing. It's not just family members coming after them again because of revenge.
I can't wait to see it again because there's a whole conversation in the coffee shop between Jessica and Sydney. Now I'm going to go back and be like really dissect it.
There's little things. And again, I'm only saying this because I love this movie. And when you love something, you can find little things you want to critique. Like I almost would have just in that conversation with Jessica, I would have loved one part where, remember how it's Jessica's son, who's the true crime obsessed Sydney impressed. Like what if Sydney was like, God, like, you know, when I wrote, and Jessica's like Out of Darkness, like, or like some little things where you're like, wait, maybe she has a little more knowledge of Sydney than her son. It's not just her son.
She was in it. I was like, I said to myself, you weren't there. I was in my mind.
What'd you say?
I said, I hope she's the killer.
I mean, of course, she's great. She's amazing.
Me too.
She's an incredible actress.
Yeah, and like because like, and again, talking about like a step up from Scream 6, like I know Scream 6 was praised by a lot of people. I can't get over that finale and those killers and the quality of acting there. So I feel like again, Kevin casting Anna Camp, knowing to cast Anna Camp, and working with her to direct that scene in the finale, I feel like they restored a part of the Scream formula of the Ghostface killer with even just her performance, even taking the writing out of it and everything that I described about like who Jessica is. And for me, the finale it automatically gets a little bit of a bonus because of just how good her performance is.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the Scream 6 finale, I don't want to talk, like poor Dermot Mulroney, who I think is probably a good actor. Like, I don't know what was going on with that performance.
The eye.
Yes, but like when he was like, "Oh, yep, it's me." Like I was like, "Is this the cops in Halloween 5?" Like it was really bizarre. Anyway, okay, because we have to move forward because finally Sydney has a great cat fight with Jessica, and then in a perfect way to take her out, Sydney and her daughter shoot literally the face off of Anna Camp together. But it was a great shared moment because it was almost like they had to do it together. And then I do want to get to at the very end. There's two scenes that almost brought tears to my eyes because they were so emotional. The first is Sydney sat with her daughter and finally told her why she named her after Tatum. Not because Tatum got murdered and just because they were a friend, but because Tatum was fierce, a fighter. She trusted her and she was fearless and she always wanted this for her daughter. And it was just so nice. I almost feel a little emotional now saying because then she said, "What else do you want to know?" And Tatum says, "That's good for now." And they hug. And it's just so nice. And it's just, one thing that a lot of horror movies today lack is heart. And that's why, like, all these people that are knocking this movie, did you not see the heart in this movie? When you can have a horror movie that has someone getting gutted on a harness combined with a scene that will almost bring you to tears, what more do you want? Like, come on, we've got the best of everything when you have heart and you have like chase scenes. And then we also have the scene between her and Gail, because in her interview with Gail, she said Tatum was the last friend she truly trusted. And obviously Gail took that a little personally. And then she finally apologized to Gail for not coming to New York and say she does trust her and she does want to be there for her. And they hug. Thoughts on those two emotional scenes? Because I thought they were both just so well done.
Listen, this is what I needed from Scream 7. Because I was also disappointed that Gail was set aside, and the last thing we saw of her in Scream 6 was her bleeding out on her apartment, dying on her apartment floor. Here, Kevin brings her into the epilogue and allows all three of them walk out together. But it's also, we talked about at the top of the show that this movie, in my opinion, is about Sydney's relationship with Gail and Tatum, both of them. And I love that the epilogue addresses both Gail and Tatum. And the big crescendo, the big climax is the Tatum resolution, because that's been the underlying plot that runs through Scream 7. And in my opinion, this is the real pinnacle moment of the movie, not even the finale with the killers and the reveal and the fight and the death of the killer. It's really Sydney letting her guard down and allowing Tatum in, and the beginning of, Sydney being more honest and open with Tatum. Like, Sydney has learned a lesson. Tatum is now learning the truth, and they're using Tatum Riley to unlock this kind of beautiful thing about their relationship. It's again, no notes, perfection, A+, including the final shot of them walking out, all three of them together.
I second that. When the three ladies were walking down the driveway, I was like, oh, that's a great ending.
It is. It's like, yeah.
It's like Kevin asked me, Ryan Showers, "Hey, Ryan, what is the final shot of Scream 7 you want?" I would have said, "Give me Gail, Sydney, and Tatum walking out, all three arm in arm." And it happened. It was just like crazy.
That's good. I mean, like, I loved it too. I loved that Mark survived because I didn't want Sydney to lose another partner. And to be honest, like, I really liked Mark. I really liked him. And I just thought he was such a fighter. Like, I used to really like Derek but they spent so much in Scream 2, like, making him a possible suspect that you didn't know if you could trust him. Right. I never thought Mark was involved with it. I didn't want them to do that to Sydney again. I know Kevin would never put Sydney through that again, but I just liked his character. And so I was glad that he survived because I did want Sydney's husband to survive. But obviously having the three women together was perfect. And then they even have the little mid-credit scene of Mindy doing a broadcast, because Mindy and Chad have a quick attack scene.
They used.
They used the same music they used at the end of Scream 1, which was a great, that and Don't Fear the Reaper, great. Oh, and Red Right Hand, of course. So many Easter eggs. But they have Mindy doing a broadcast. She's like Courtney Gail's gonna let her do it, and it's like it's funny, it's serious, it's great because first she's messing up, but then she does it well, and it's like, again, she's gonna be the next generation of doing this news, these news reports, but at the same time, Gail's not retiring. I think they could be like sidekicks and stuff, almost like the morning show with Jennifer Aniston and Reese Witherspoon. She's like the younger version, but anyway, yeah. So I just thought it was a great ending for the characters we love. Obviously, they got rid of and killed all the characters we didn't really know and stuff, but that's expected from a Scream movie. Overall thoughts. I'm gonna go last this time. Want your overall thoughts? Tim, you go first of the movie.
I loved it. I mean, like, honestly, if there's two girls fighting in a garage at the end, I am all for that. Like, I honestly, like, I saw it like on a big screen. So I was just so invested. And watch it, I realized as I was sitting there watching it, like, I obviously saw the original a good 5 times. I saw part 2 5 times. I've seen every film like so many times. So I'm already like, you already have me. Like, I mean, like you have Sydney in it. So I'm there. I'm like, there was nothing I am like complaining about. I was totally into it. I mean, the only thing I wanted more was Kelly Ripa's husband.
I think you want him more in your own dreams.
No.
Okay, Ryan, final and overall thoughts on Scream 7.
I loved this movie, and to me, it's maybe not breaking into the original trilogy for me, but that's very sacred. I think it's easily on the quality of Scream 4. I would say it's even higher than Scream 4, easily better than 5 and 6. And I couldn't be happier with the way that Kevin restored Scream, both as a writer and a director, and and how they approach Sydney's storyline, the development of Gail, the creation of Tatum, kind of making the twins important and great in their own right. I have really no complaints about this movie in a big way. I'm so happy. I'm fulfilled. Again, I feel as though the franchise I know and recognize has been restored with Scream 7, and I don't understand the criticism. I don't understand the reviews. I think they're bizarre. I think they're borderline unethical, if not fully unethical. I don't get it. I think that this is an amazing movie, and I'm happy that Scream fans are going to see it and also enjoying it themselves, because there's a lot of positivity out there, even if it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. This is what I'll say. Look, I agree with a lot of what both of you guys are saying. I think it was a true return to form for this movie. I think that it did feel like a Kevin Williamson Scream film, and I mean that in the best way, because the original films, or actually the 3 films that he wrote, are my favorites. And I could feel even Wes Craven's presence on this movie, Kevin's presence. Nev was amazing. Gail was amazing. I think that the suspense level was higher, the most suspense I've seen in a Scream movie since maybe the second one, with the way that they handled some of the chase scenes, the dark settings, hiding. It's like a slasher's lover's dream is to have a killer creeping around in the dark and coming out at the most inopportune time. That is what slasher film lovers want. And it's like Kevin knew exactly how to do that with Mark's attack scene, with the opening scene, with the Sydney and Tatum around through the wall scene. So it's like the suspense level was great. For people who love gore, they had just enough gore to make it interesting and fun and different. And I really appreciated the characterization, because they did have to, juggle a ton of characters in here. And that is not easy to do and still keep the focus on Sydney. I think that our theater had so much fun with it. And like Tim said, I was clapping throughout and laughing and screaming and all this.
Never does.
Yeah, which I don't do. And that's because I had such a good time with it. Again, the weaker part of it was the motive and the reveal, and I probably will warm up to that more over more extended watches. And I think that there could have been some changes to that maybe would have made it work better for me, but in no way did that take away from the film. Like, again, that's like, if there's a scene in a movie that I'm not the biggest fan of, it doesn't take away from the movie. Do I love Jerry O'Connell singing to Sydney in Scream 2? No, but it doesn't take away from the movie. I think it's necessary, And so you're always going to find things that you like better than others. But I don't understand the criticism online. I do feel like a lot of people who are not liking it, I feel like they did not watch the same movie that I saw, because a Scream lover of the original films of Sydney, of that type of feeling, I don't know how you don't enjoy this.
Getting crazy. get crazy about I Know What You Did Last Summer, because that I didn't recognize that film.
Exactly. Like, I didn't even feel like I saw as much hate toward the I Know What You Did Last Summer reboot, and that just was just bad. Like, didn't even feel like I Know What You Did Last Summer. So again, I do think there's ulterior motives in all of these reviews and people coming out against it, and I don't get it. But you know what, like, Scream means so much to all of us, and we loved it, and I think that's what Kevin set out to do. That's what Nev set out to do. And you know what, it's making tons of fucking money, and we're gonna get a Scream 8. So these people, like, it's not working what you're doing.
The crazy thing is, like, I was like, if you guys if you complain, it's not gonna happen, so just zap that.
I agree with everything that you guys said, and I think that this is going to be a movie that, for years, the people who love Scream, or even who watch it casually, will go back to this movie and love this movie. And I think eventually the fever is going to wear off, and people will, the people who are criticizing it now for bad faith reasons will come around to it, whether it's a Scream 3 and 4 situation or whether there's a reevaluation. I don't know. I guess it all just depends on the future. And it's a shame. And I don't want Kevin and Nev to feel down about the bad reviews. I think they should be 110% proud of the movie that they made.
Yeah, I totally. Oh, final question before we leave. What would each of you like to see from a Scream 8? Ryan, you go first. I'm a champion of Sidney Prescott, and I want her and Gail to, even if she's not the main character in Scream 8, even if Tatum is, I want Sidney to be significant and important to the plot. I don't want a Scream 5 again. I think that would be a slap in the face to this movie and to all the fans who are showing up for this movie because of Neve Campbell. And frankly, Neve Campbell is the one who is almost like on her own, solely marketing this movie. I think that if you look at the success of Seven financially, it's because of Neve. We love Neve. Don't just throw her away like they did with Scream 5. So that would be my wish. Tim, how about you?
Okay, this is what I want. I want Neve Campbell in a car driving to Stu's grave, and then she pulls out a part of the fence. She sticks it in, and then it gets struck by lightning.
Okay, Jason lives. He's doing the opening for Friday the 13th. Jason lives, and Stu gets reincarnated as zombie Stu. You know what? From your lips to Kevin Williamson's ears. Okay. For me, look, you know this, Ryan. I am a Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode fan in Halloween, and I want her back in every Halloween, and I'm not afraid to say that. I feel the same way about Sidney Prescott and Neve Campbell in Scream movies. I do not think she's past her prime, and I love that in this movie they have Sidney say, "Past my prime, fuck you," because that's how I feel. She's not past her prime. I want her in the movie. I understand that Tatum should be important and probably the main focus or target of the next movie, but we want Sidney to be like the Gale to Tatum, and I want Gale in it too. Like, these are people that make this franchise. Ghostface changes every movie, but our main final girls don't, and I don't want that to change. So I would like the three women to be like central to the plot. Obviously, we're going to have Tatum in a different situation, whether she's at college or something else, but like, I just don't want them to lose that either. So I totally agree with you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And, I'm glad that you articulated that, because that's something that's so core to Scream. Some people try to define Scream as the meta franchise, and sure, that's a part of it. But for me, what made Scream such an elite franchise, and why I have a podcast about it, why I'm so obsessed with it, was that it was, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, David Arquette, directed by Kevin Williamson for 4 films. The continuity couldn't have been clearer and crisper. You can even add Kevin Williamson for 3 out of 4. Aaron Kruger worked on Scream 4 and 3. So, I mean, there's such consistency through Scream, and that is the real secret sauce to why Scream is really great. So I think, that should be remembered just as much as we should try to make things fresh and new. I think Scream 7 showed you can have Neve Campbell as the main character and innovate the franchise in so many different ways.
Yeah, well said. So again, Ryan, tell everyone where they can find Scream with Ryan C. Showers online and on social.
I am Scream with Ryan C. Showers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you can listen to podcasts, you can listen to me. I am not as handsome as these folks to be on YouTube. But listen to me on any podcast platform. And if you're on social media and like on horror social media, you probably see my posts just because I'm annoying as shit. But you can find me at Scream with RCS across all platforms.
Your posts are so like, the pictures and the collages, beautiful.
Yeah, and
Thank
again,
you.
if this is your first time hearing Ryan and you're a Scream fan, oh my God, check out his show. Like, this is just the tip of the iceberg with how much he in-depth, really thoughtful, clever analysis of these films. So like, can't recommend it more. Anyway, thank you so much, Ryan, for coming on our show and especially talking about this movie of all movies with us. We are so grateful for your time and, you know, can't wait to see what happens with this franchise.
My daughter.
Thank you guys for having me.
Okay, we'll talk with you soon, okay?
All right. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Happy Horror Time.
Happy Horror Time is co-hosted by myself, Matt Emmert, and Tim Murdoch. It's produced by Jacob Randall and Paris Mance. If you'd like to support our show, you can sign up to be a patron starting at just $1 a month at www.patreon.com/happyhorrortime. $5 patrons get access to all our bonus content, including 2 new bonus episodes every month, our monthly after show mini episode, audio commentaries, access to our Discord to chat directly with us, and even the chance to review a film with us in a bonus episode.
Patrons also get all our regular episodes ad-free and a day early, our monthly newsletter, the chance to vote in polls, and autographed Happy Horror Time stickers.
I'm Matt Emmert.
And I'm Tim Murdoch.
And we hope you have a happy horror time.
All copyrighted material used or referenced in this show belong to their rightful owners and made possible by the Fair Use Act.
And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back. Get another beer, you want one? Yeah, sure. I'll be right back!
Dear God, Ryan,